All of the gameplay footage in this video was recorded off of my GPD Win using an external capture card. No performance has been impacted significantly by doing this. So the question that I'd like to pose is which version of Dolphin is in fact the best one to use when playing GameCube games and Wii games on the GPD Win. After a lot of searching, I found that in pretty much all regards, the best version is not any of the Dolphin versions, or the main versions, and it's not the newest Ishiiruka, I believe is the pronunciation. It's none of the modified versions either, or not the most recent one. It's actually an older one, which is Ishiiruka 744. And this version, as far as I can tell, is the last, or at least the most stable version based off of Dolphin 5.0. So it combines the benefits of Dolphin 5.0 with the benefits of Ishiiruka's enhancements. In my experience, and the experience of a lot of other people, for whatever reason, the newer builds of Dolphin don't seem to run as fast, and that's why the Ishiiruka is somewhat debated as actually being faster than just using Dolphin 5.0. But since Ishiiruka 744 is based off of the older versions of Dolphin, it actually still has that speed. So let's get right into settings first, and then we'll come back to the comparison. Okay, let's quickly go over what I believe to be the optimal settings for using Dolphin on the GPD Win. You go into config, you want to make sure you have dual core speed ups enabled, and the JIT recompiler enabled as your settings for this. Interface doesn't really matter. Audio, you want all the fastest stuff, and you want time stretching, and also some other ones have audio buffering. Both of them work very similarly. They keep the sound of the game from desyncing when there is slowdown, so it makes it a lot more clean. It doesn't distort it even if it goes slower, and it makes slowdowns a lot less noticeable and a lot less grating. In GameCube, you want skip BIOS. Even if you put the BIOS in, they won't work properly unless you have some settings set all the time, which will induce a little bit of slowdown, but not too much, so I just recommend not having the BIOS at all. I do have the Wii NAND set up on mine, but that does not seem to actually make a difference. You don't want to use PAL 60 mode, although for Super Mario Galaxy I have set that in the config to be enabled, because in that game, and possibly some others, after researching a lot, I've found that it actually just disposes of the frame, so it still sort of renders it, it just doesn't show it to the screen every 6th frame. So it won't actually give you a speed boost if you run it in 50 Hz mode. You're just going to waste you're just going to get less frames on the screen, which you might as well just take the extra frames, even if you're going to get the slowdown. Aspect ratio 16:9. I saw no benefit from the 4:3. English, unless you don't speak English, whatever you want, etc., etc. Advanced is the CPU clock override. This is incredibly important, and I'll get back to that in just a minute. Moving on, we can go over to the graphics. You want to use the DirectX 12 backend. In some versions, this is labeled experimental, but recently it's gone out of experimental, and this seems to have affected all of my current versions of Dolphin, so presumably if you download one of the newer versions, it's going to change the backend from saying experimental in all of your versions of Dolphin. VSync off, it helps if the game's already running in full speed, but doesn't really help too much if it's not, so I set that on a game-by-game basis. Show FPS, you don't need that if you don't want it. I just like to see how the game's running in general. Enable multi-threading, very important, usually checked off by default, make sure it is. You want the lowest internal resolution. Auto, some people have claimed it helps, but it really does not. And going back to general really quick, using a low full screen resolution uh, is very much not something that gives you any sort of real improvement. It's just going to make things look worse, so I highly don't recommend doing that. It's not worth whatever boost it would actually give. Back under enhancements, scaled DBF copy, or scaled EFB copy, sorry. This does help a little bit if you disable it, but it's very, very, very minor, so you might as well leave it on. It's mostly when you're scaling to different resolutions, like going into full screen, uh, but it doesn't really do too much either way, so I recommend keeping it on. And force 64-bit color is incredibly important because that'll make a very good speed boost. It's usually on by default. The rest of these don't really help in most circumstances, if not make it worse. Texture scaling will not help. Nothing here is important. Nothing here is important either. Uh, Skip EFB access is very important, and if you are in a Ishiiruka, I believe, I don't know how to pronounce it, the modified version of Dolphin, there's also fast EFB access, which helps out a lot. Then there's ignore format changes, you want that checked. You basically want everything checked here. You want this on fast, you want this disabled, and this is what I was talking about for the GameCube BIOS. If you really want to have the startup at the beginning, you need to add the GameCube BIOS and then uncheck disable and leave it on virtual. This doesn't have too much difference. It's maybe like half a frame at most, a difference in speed. So if you really want the GameCube startup, that's how you have to do it so that it won't look completely broken. But keep it disabled otherwise. Bounding box, you want that disabled, and you want fast def full uh, async shader checked off, and this one just leave alone. It's not going to help you. There are a few other versions of Dolphin, uh, Ishiiruka, that have extra settings, and in those versions, I recommend checking those off. Uh, at the time of speaking, the newest version that I'm aware of is 9.26. So 9.26, every setting except this one is definitely worth it. Or at least as far as I can tell, I've been having some issues with that version. So I've mostly been using 9.22 for my testing, but I still found that both versions weren't as good as some previous versions. And you don't really need anything here except for compile shaders on startup. Enable progressive scan uh, does cause some problems for a few games, specifically Super Mario Galaxy didn't want to run properly in the 50 Hz mode. I haven't tested other 50 Hz games particularly for that long, but it's best to just keep that off anyway. Borderless Fullscreen, you can have that if you want, but it doesn't really make a difference. But compile shaders on startup, if this option is available, you want it. It'll help keep things a little bit smooth, but as you can see at the bottom there in the description, it can take quite a while. And in Dolphin Ishiiruka 922, it will have an error after a while, which you have to hold down the enter key until all the errors go away, wait for it to start, close it out, and then open it again, and it'll finish correctly the second time. Uh, it's a knowledge problem and supposedly fixed in the most recent version, but as I mentioned, I've been having issues with that version. So moving on, uh, for the the CPU override. What you want to do is you want to start a game. I'm going to start Metroid Prime here. And what you want to do is you want to run the game in intense areas where you start to see the you want to find like a good area, presumably like a starting point where you start the game, and then you want to drag it down right until it gets from being, like in this case, full frames per second is 50. So the title screen never matters. You should be ignoring that. And in a couple games, like Metroid Prime, I'm pretty sure, and also Smash Brothers Melee, the games will actually run at full speed if you can get the VPS to stay at 100%, which you can see in the top right, or to the rightmost value in the window title. So what you want to do is you want to stand around in an area. In this game, I do need to do a little bit of tweaking still, I believe. You can see it's running 50 here. What you want to do is you want to open up config. And you want both of these things on screen at the same time. And you slide this value until you start seeing it drop off. So see right now it's running at only 22 frames. Well, I use the arrow keys for this, and you want to sort of move it around until you get 50 out of 50, and then sort of just get it to right around where it's just about that. And then as you play through the game, I'm waiting for it to, there it goes, it dipped, so I usually go up to, so this is like 36, it's going to 37%. And you will see that it does, in some spots, it tends to jump over some values sometimes. But this is a good point for here, and then as you walk around, if you see it say like 45 FPS at 100%, you want to, and hopefully it's not like a super intense area, which unfortunately it usually is, but you want to sort of try and then stay there and then move the thing up and make sure that you're not getting like any sort of increase. So if you move it up and then you see it's 100% again, then you want to sort of keep doing that until you find the area where it's running at like 48, 49, and you move it up, and then the VPS starts to dip. At that point, you lower it down to where the VPS is stable again, and that's basically the perfect point for that game. I found that 50% is a pretty good value for Metroid Prime. As you can see, the VPS is just barely dipping here. So maybe it's more like 49% is a little bit better there. So I might change it to 49. Whoops. Still in this. But so that's pretty good. That should be more or less around full speed for most of the game, and even if you start to dip in frames, which I'm not sure, maybe if I look up and around, yeah, you can see I'm getting some slowdown there for VPS, so that's not the optimal setting. But once you find it where the VPS does not dip too often, you then want to go into the the config for the game by right-clicking it, hitting Properties, then hit Edit Config. And then you want to add this up here at the top, Core, and then add the word overclock, spelled like this, I believe it's case sensitive, an equal sign, and then you want the 0 point and then the percent, because it's out of between 0 and 1. So 100% is 1, 0% is 0, and in the case of 50%, it's 0.5. And then like 37% would be 0.3, 0.37. So just add 0 point and then your percent, and that will be your overclock value. And then you also want to make sure that overclock enable is equal to true. That way it always turns it on when you use it. And this value will always be the same every time you start the game, unless you move that value in the config like I just did. Once you move the value and have it set to enabled, that will start changing it, and it'll be changed until the next time you start it. So change this to 49. In fact, I might make it 48 because that wasn't the perfect value. Save that. And then over here you see controls. This is something else that I really recommend. This is how you do it for GameCube. Add profile 1 equals and then whatever the name of your controller profile is. That way, for GameCube in particular, I have it so that the Sunshine profile lets me use fully pressed and non-fully pressed triggers, and then there's a smash profile which allows me to have the LR buttons and then the Z button for grab, which I have as one of the, I think it's either L3 or R3 for the other profile, because most games that use the analog triggers don't really use the Z button more than like a map, which is very useful. So I have two different profiles, and rather than loading them each time, I have it done through the config. So here we have two different versions of Ishiiruka. Version 744 is on the left and 922 is on the right. All the sound that's going to be played is through 744, and as you can hear, it's not perfect, and it's neither of them run perfectly. 922 isn't actually the newest one. I believe it's 926, but I've had problems with that version. I think it worked for maybe like a little bit, but then it just sort of broke on me and everything renders really wrong. But it ran basically the same as the previous version. It just fixed a couple of glitches here and there. You can see that I sort of just messed around when I was doing this test, but I tried to do the same things. I'm gonna try and be quiet for most of this, so let me just wrap up my thoughts here. You'll see that in a few seconds I'm gonna not talk to the Luma. That's specifically just because I don't want to talk to the Lumas. They just annoy me. But other than that, this is the comparison between the two versions. The left one, it might be hard to tell, but there is a consistent extra 2-3 frames. It's not like the biggest difference, but it is a significant one nonetheless. You can find this version of Dolphin alongside the latest builds for Ishiiruka, and I'll leave that link in the description. Just make sure you download the one that's labeled 744 if you want to use the version showcased in this video. I'll also give you guys some links to other games being played with this version of Dolphin and the settings that I showcased before. But if you have any suggestions or know of any other improvements yourself, or getting any different results, please leave a comment below. Together we can improve this so we get the best experience for everyone. And thanks for watching, and enjoy the rest of the comparison.